Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified when new videos are released. Today's block is called Hill and Hollow. It's 12-inch finished, and I believe it was from the time when people were heading west in the United States and settling the western part of the United States, and this is when they were in the desert. I could be totally wrong on that, but that's what I remember reading about. And here is the block, the diagram, and I know some of you are probably, just groaning right now thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible, but you know it won't be terrible if I'm showing it to you. Here are 4 set together, and I just love all the secondary designs going on, and I love the chaos of this. I just think it's really interesting. We have 2 patches. The first, patch A, is a 2-inch finished half square triangle. And I'm going to suggest we make the half square triangles 2 at a time. When we do that, we'll cut the squares, 2 7/8 inch squares, and don't subcut them. The other alternative is if you're going to rotary cut and you'd rather cut patches and sew patches, then you're going to cut the square in half once on the diagonal to get 2 patches. You'll need 8 patches if you're using patches, or 4 squares of the yellow, 12 patches, or 8 patches plus 2 squares for the blue, and 12 patches or 6 squares. And we'll go through all this because it sounds like a lot. If you're using AccuQuilt, here are the dies you can use for that. And when you are using AccuQuilt, you are cutting patches. Here are the half square triangles we're going to make. We're going to make 8 of these and 4 of these. Then we'll have some left over in this fabric to just put in as we're putting the block together. They're not half square triangles, they're just patches. Patch B is a half square triangle, 4-inch finished. And we're going to cut patches for this because these are the big triangles here in the corners. We'll cut 4 7/8 inch squares and cut them in half once on the diagonal. You'll need 4 patches of each of the background fabric and the dark fabric. Here is the AccuQuilt dies you can use if you're using AccuQuilt. We're going to first make our half square triangles, 8 of these and 4 of these. Then we're going to take the half square triangles and the rest of the A patches, and we're going to sew these in the diagonal. This will make more sense when we get the actual patches out. But here's the half square triangle you'd made, these 2, and then this one here. And we're going to sew these patches on, and I've numbered this 1 because this is row 1, then this is row 2. You'll take the half square triangle and sew these 2 patches on, and this is row 3. This is what you want it to look like. And after you finish that, then you're just going to add the triangles to either side, and you'll make your square unit. Then we'll have 4 of these units. Let's look at the fabrics. These are our patch A's, the half square triangles. This is patch B, the larger half square triangles that go in the corners. Let's put these aside for now. And I want to show you what we're going to do with this. We're going to take these and make half square triangles, and we'll make a total of 8 of these. Then we'll put these down here, and these we're going to make half square triangles, and we'll make 4 of these. We're just lining these up here. See if I can get this right. Okay, now we're going to fill in, I'm just looking at my diagram here, we're going to fill these in like this. So there's your diagonal piece, I'm calling it. We'll do these half square triangles first. There'll be 8 of these and 4 of these. And then when we have those sewn together, we're going to sew this together. That's our row 1. Then we'll sew this and this. That's our row 2. Then we'll sew this. That's our row 3. Then we'll sew these together, the 3 rows together. And after that's done, we'll add a triangle here and a triangle here. And we'll have 4 of these units, and that will make the entire block. So see how simple that is? Let's start by doing the half square triangles. We're going to make 8 of these and 4 of these. If you cut squares to make your half square triangles, and you want to make the 2 at a time half square triangles, there's a little demo coming up next that shows you how to do that. On the back side of the light fabric, we're going to draw a diagonal line, put the fabrics together, right sides together, and we're going to stitch on either side of the diagonal line. Here is the diagonal line drawn, and then the stitching on both sides. Now we cut this in half along the diagonal line. Then we have our 2 half square triangles. Press the seams open and cut off the nubs. Now we have the half square triangles are done and they're pressed. The seams are pressed open. If you cut the patches with your rotary cutter, you might want to use your deluxe corner trimmer from Marty Michelle, and it trims off these corners and it makes it easier to put these together when you're trying to sew them. If not, then make sure you cut off all the nubs as you piece. There'll be little nubs sticking out everywhere, so cut those off before you piece to the next one. Next, we're going to piece the rows together. So we're going to piece this together, and these 2 together, and then these 2. Press your seams open. So then you will have this. If I can get these right. This. That. And that. And it might be confusing, but you always want to line up your seam lines here. When you sew these 2 together on the seam lines, you have a point here and a point here. And you want to make sure those are pretty points, that you don't cut off the points or leave them floating if you don't have to. So you have 2 here, and then you'll have 1 here, then you'll have more later on. So the little next segment will show you how to keep your points pretty. At some point when you finish your square on point unit, you'll have to sew something else to it. And you want to keep these points nice and sharp, and sometimes you might be matching it to a seam line or a plain piece of fabric or maybe another point. And I'm going to show you how to keep these points nice. If you've pressed your seam open, you will see where these 3 fabrics intersect and form a point right here. That's your point on the back, and it's also your point on the front. So you can stitch with this part on top, and you'll be able to make sure that your point stays there. I take a pin and put it right there at the point, and then pick it up on this back side. And in this case, I'm going to come down about 1/4 inch and then put that right in the seam line. That way the point will end up right on the seam line. Put your fabric pieces together and line up the top edges, or the edges that you need to line up. And make sure your pin is perpendicular, goes straight down into the fabric, like that. If you're at an angle like this, your points won't match. So make sure they're straight, perpendicular to the fabric, and then put it into the fabric. When you start sewing, line up these edges here. Start at your 1/4 inch and sew all the way down, and you're going to aim for this point where that pin goes into the fabric, and you'll know that you're matching the point and the seam line on the back. And straighten your bottom edge again and continue stitching 1/4 inch off. And here's what the stitching looks like if you can barely see it on here with this thread. It goes right across here, leaving the point open. You're not stitching over the point. And then if I flip it over, you'll see it's not exactly 1/4 inch there, but that doesn't matter, because what you want is the point to match the seam allowance here. Press the seam open and you're finished. After you've stitched the diagonal together, this is what it will look like when you stitch the 2 together and then you press the seams open. Next, you're going to take your 2 large triangles and stitch them on either side. And make sure you look at the diagram because it is directional. This goes on this side with the light fabrics, and this goes on this side with the other fabrics. To do that, you just turn this over and match these edges. I like to flick this over so I can see the point here, and I don't cut the point off when I stitch. So you're going to stitch from here, stitch your pretty point, and then off to the edge. Press your seam open and then do it on this side the same way. Then you'll have 4 pieces like this, and we're going to put the 4 pieces together to make the block. The 4 squares are finished, and we're just going to lay them out. And when you do, we're going to use this single half square triangle here, and it has to make a pinwheel in the center. So we rotate it, each block or each unit, to make the pinwheel here in the center. And then here's your block coming out this way. So these 2 together and these 2 together, press, and then sew the rows together, and your block is finished. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified when new videos are released.